Hello, my name is Andrea Singleton,
My name is Tiana Brown.
and this is the presentation for Finance 653. So our financial analysis, the industries that we choose is the pharmaceutical, automotive, and airlines. For the pharmaceutical, we choose Sanofi, Pfizer, Bristol Myers, Gilead, and Bayer. Okay, so the first analysis that we did is about the short-term solvency. So for that, we got the current ratio, quick ratio, and cash ratio. As you can see, the bright yellow one is Sanofi, and the light yellow one is Pfizer. If you can see in the 2019, at the end of the year is when they declared the pandemic. Since they're pharmaceuticals, they were directly affected. It's important to notice that Pfizer, you can see a high drop, is because they had to make certain changes to adapt to the new reality. And Sanofi, on the other hand, their specialization is in rare diseases and vaccines, so they already had the infrastructure to start the research needed for them to start combating the COVID-19 vaccine pandemic. You can see in all the ratios the drop in Pfizer and the constant increase for Sanofi. On the other hand, the other ones keep a steady pace. Okay, so the long-term solvency. In this one, you can see the Sanofi keep a steady ratio. Again, it's because they already had all the infrastructure and their new investment was minimal. Again, Pfizer got spiking up a little bit in 2019, keeping a steady pace. If you see, the other companies had to make major changes. That's why the ratios go so high. But if you see in the tire, you can see that Sanofi and Pfizer are the ones who come the best, especially Pfizer, because you can see that they actually could afford the debt that inquire for the pandemic, and going always on a steady pace since 2020 to 21 and 22, going all the way up. And the opposite to Sanofi, who their highest peak was in 2020, but then drop it in 2021 and 2022. And the asset turnover, again, Sanofi kept a steady pace because they already had infrastructure and all the supply chain for the vaccines. So, and again, they didn't create the vaccine, it was Pfizer who did it. So all the investment here, they kind of slow the cells and dedicate completely all the resources to create it, and then you see the return and all the positivity for them to move in all their supply chain for the vaccine. It goes all the way from 2020, 21 and continue going up for recent 2022. Their profitability. As you can see, the profit margin, again, for Sanofi went a little bit down in 2019, but then see the opposite for Pfizer when they discovered the vaccine for 2019 to 2020, and keeping at a steady pace. They already, it's important to notice that Pfizer was already high in the profit margin, a different on Sanofi, but they managed better the crisis. The same as the ROE and the ROA. You see again, see how the slide going up a little bit down. You see it's not a highest drop like the other companies, and then Sanofi went all the way up. Again, they already had the infrastructure and everything that they needed to combat it. So, but Pfizer managed it better, as you can see in all the ratios. The market value. Again, this one, if you see, it varies a lot. Like the price to equity ratio, again, Sanofi, it was in the highest in 2019, dropping drastically all the way to 2020 for all the companies except to Bristol Myers, but then going up in 2021. If you can see, Bayer is the one who mass produced the vaccine and helped with all the supply chain. They have a wider portfolio, so they were able to do all this. But if you see the price to book ratio, Pfizer always kept a steady pace. The best one was Gilead, that it was already high, so that means that they are selling a premium price. And the EVA, again, the lowest risk always was Pfizer. In 2019, when they declared the pandemic, it was they were like an steady piece, all of them. But if you see, it took the highest risk when they were like distributing a new vaccine that was like the main source that they had. So of course it was certain uncertainty, because that was, even though they were already in the research, that was not their specialty, as different as Sanofi. So, but then they see that they managed the crisis better from 2020. If you see, it goes up to 2021 and then all the way spiking up in 2022. Of course, the enterprise value was going to be affected by it, going always constantly up. So overall, the best company is Pfizer. The reason for this, even though all the ratios are companies that they were up or down with them, the ROA, ROE, the price to book ratio, the profit margin, the enterprise value, is always better with them, is the stability. The stability in the way they manage the crisis. Because the other companies needed more time to be able to manage it, Pfizer did it better.
Moving on to the automotive. Toyota, Nissan, Honda, General Motors, and Ford are the 5 companies we analyzed. In the solvency ratios, current ratio, quick ratio, and cash ratio, Toyota would be the one that kept the highest short-term solvency here, followed closely by Honda. As you can see, they kept it steady. They were the highest all throughout each ratios. Again, Honda takes the lead here. Well, not again, but Honda takes the lead here. They're keeping it steady throughout TDR, debt to equity ratio, equity multiplier, and tier. In the TDR, Honda does get close to Toyota. Although they weren't the highest here, they did have the highest in the other. In the asset turnover, Honda takes leadership by a very large percentage. As you can see, they spiked very high. Even through the pandemic, you thought they would drop, but no, they were steady throughout all years. For profitability, the best one, the profit margin, would be Toyota, and GM followed after. The ROA, the one that was consistent there, would have been GM, followed by Toyota, as well as the ROE. The market value in the PE ratio, Toyota takes leadership, followed by Honda. The best company we chose here is Toyota because of the profit margin, the high profit margin, ROA, ROE, PE ratio, price to book ratio, WACC, enterprise value, and they are the ones that were stable throughout the years with consistent growth. Then we analyzed the airlines industry, and here we did United Airlines, American Airlines, Southwest, Copa Airlines, as well as Delta. The current ratio, quick ratio, and cash ratio that all had a high difference was Southwest. As y'all can see, the highest was Southwest. They're the ones in the blue, followed by Copa. Copa was pretty close with all, but the highest short-term solvency here was Southwest. Long-term solvency, Southwest is one of the best ones, having the lowest compared to all the rest of them in 2018. They did spike as going up in the years. So in Southwest, here it was Southwest.
Okay, so in the management turnover, so as you remember, and at the end of 2019 and at the beginning of the 2020, well, the whole year of 2020 was a pandemic, and the airlines were the highest impact by the pandemic. So we are considering these companies, how well they recover from the 2020 drop that all of them had. And if you see, Southwest has a really high asset turnover. That means that they were managing the crisis better. And the interesting thing is that even though it's a small airline, it was getting hand to hand with big companies with a greater experience like United and Delta. Okay, so analyzing the profitability, as I mentioned before, with the pandemic, as you can see, all the profit and the profitability ratios goes in the negative numbers. So we are judging in this case for how low their losses were in 2020. And again, Southwest is one of the lowest in the negative numbers that they have in 2020. But if you can see in 2021, one of the first ones who start recovering it, and they keep it in a steady pace on 2022, same as the ROA and same as the ROE. It's always one of the first ones who recover from the pandemic. Okay, the market value. For this, well, how they respond to the crisis. If you see in 2020, a lot of the companies, actually most of the companies, except for Copa Airlines, couldn't recover from the pandemic. So we started analyzing the numbers from 2022. If you see Southwest Airlines, it was hand to hand to American Airlines, which is one of the biggest companies that in the airline industry that we have. If you see the price to book ratio, even though Delta sells for a premium price, we are not going to use it as a reference because they have a wider portfolio. So just with the airline industry, you can see Southwest always keep the best numbers, followed by Copa Airlines and United. The risk to invest in this company, as you can see in 2021, all of them were in the negative numbers, only going in the positive numbers. Delta Airlines, again, Delta Airlines have a wider portfolio. So we're using how well they manage the crisis. As you see, one of the highest risks ended up being American Airlines, but one of the lowest risks was Southwest. And then following the positive numbers by a small amount, Copa Airlines. The enterprise value, it went up from 2020, it was in the highest, then it went in 2021, keeping in 2022, and the big companies, of course, going in a way ahead. But if you see, Southwest keeps steady, that always is in the positive, always growing. So for this reason is that we chose Southwest as a company that we will invest if we had the money to invest today. One, because of the solvency ratios that are always the best. Two, for the profitability, for the market value, and especially how well they manage the pandemic crisis. Okay, so from all the three companies, for all the three industries, the airline industry, automotive industry, and the pharmaceuticals, we choose Pfizer. We choose first one, the pharmaceutical, because we can see that the ones that they have all what they have in common is the pandemic hit them drastically. And we think that the pharmaceutical is the one who managed it better, because that's the specialty, and is Pfizer manage it better. So as you can see, Pfizer has certain suppliers, BioNTech, Shanghai Pharmaceuticals, Takeda Pharmaceuticals. What it tells us is that they don't depend on one supplier. So if one supplier declares bankruptcy or something happened to them, Pfizer will be able to still keep in business. Then for the consumers, is McCarson Corp, United States of America as overall is considered their customer, and Bristol Myers, which is another the pharmaceutical, it's a competitor. So it's interesting to see that is the customer. Again, the variety is really wide because they're an international company. This was the highest that they have, but they have still a lot of other customers who they won't be affected if one of them fail them. And this a little bit of the news of Pfizer, like where the stock heads for lowest level since 2020 after obesity drug setback. If you see scientific advances for growing hematology portfolio, immense U.S. government, this is important because, as you know, United States is the customer. With all this news, you can see is that they're expanding their portfolio and they're getting ahead in other areas that is just not the drug area and the vaccine area. So they're growing like in the hematology, and they're getting better with their supply chain distribution in the United States. Thank you very much.